time. Today it's all happening in threes, back for his third appearance on the eve of World War III, and by the grace of the Holy Trinity, we are joined by the inimitable Irish Catholic heavyweight of history, scourge of liars, scumbags and parasites everywhere. Please make him welcome, joining us live from the center of the universe, South Bend, Indiana, weighing in at the weight of Logos Rising, the one and only Dr. E. Michael Jones.
Yeah, but I know what'll make you feel better.
Oh, no, not another box of dogs.
It's another box of dogs!
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
And here we are. So this has been in the works for quite some time, this war, and it seems Israel really wants this war. What are you making of the current situation?
Well, that was General Clark referring to he didn't mention the document, but it was a think tank, an Israeli Neocon think tank called the Project for a New American Century, where they announced in the 1990s that they were going to take out, what he said, 7 countries in 5 years. This was a direct consequence of the victory over communism. They didn't lose any time. They didn't want to lose momentum. And so they decided, the Israelis basically, Colonel Wilkerson just testified to this in one of his podcasts. The Israelis have basically taken over the American defense establishment. Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld were known as neoconservatives at the time. And they had planned this war. And so the weapons of mass destruction then were a pretext. Colin Powell lied to the United Nations, said that they had weapons of mass destruction. It was a pretext to do something they wanted to do at the beginning, which was basically eliminate Saddam Hussein, who they perceived as the main obstacle to Israeli hegemony over the Middle East at that time. What they failed to understand was that Saddam Hussein held Iran in check. The United States had paid him to fight a war against Iran almost immediately after the revolution, let's say 2 years after the revolution, the Ayatollah taking over in Iran. And what that did was basically eliminate a buffer that allowed the Shia militias to take over Iraq, which made Israel less secure than it was before they engaged in this war, which the United States fought at its expense with American lives. So I think this puts the whole thing in a nutshell. These people have the power, and when they exercise the power, they bring about the exact opposite of what they intend. That has been the story of the Middle East in a nutshell. Another reason why the United States should not allow these people, by whom, in this instance, we're talking about the neoconservatives, but that's a euphemism for Jew. lots of people can't say that. Colonel McGregor is getting close to being able to say that, but it's a euphemism for Jew. This is what happens when you let the Jews take over your foreign policy.
Yeah.
So now we're in a situation where we're waiting for the last domino to fall. The last domino being Iran, but it's a completely different situation than Iraq, let's say.
Yeah.
Iran is bigger, it's more unified, and it's a mountain fortress on top of everything else. It is virtually impossible to get an army into Iran because of the mountains surrounding it. Those mountains have created deserts behind them, which are very difficult to get through. The hottest temperatures on the face of the earth were recorded in that eastern desert, just on the border with Pakistan, I believe. 150 degrees.
Wow.
This is inhospitable territory. So the United States has now decided, or we will do it aerial bombardment. A country cannot be conquered by aerial bombardment. The proof of that was North Korea, the Korean War, when the United States leveled every single building in North Korea and still had to walk away without a victory because they went underground as the Palestinians did in Gaza. So now we have Trump in office. Trump got elected because he said he was going to bring peace. The same Jewish establishment that gave us the war in Iraq, then gave us the war in Ukraine, which was not on the list. Victoria Nuland, that group of Jews didn't like Russia because of the pogroms of the 19th century. And this was supposed to be the final domino that would bring about the fall of Russia. That didn't work.
Yeah.
That didn't work. And now we've got a Trump in a situation to bring it up to date where Trump is under enormous pressure under the Israel lobby. The entire government is controlled by the Israel lobby.
Yeah.
IPAC is the instrument of control. There's only one person in the Congress that is not controlled by IPAC, and that's Thomas Massey. And he has won 3 elections simply by representing the people of Kentucky. What a novel idea. A politician actually representing the interest of the people who voted for him. He's the only guy who does this in the United States Congress.
Yeah.
So now Trump comes into office, throws away the America First idea, and then becomes totally Israel first in his foreign policy. Does not end the war in the Ukraine, which he could have done. Does not solve the problem with the Houthis, which he could have done. Does not rein in Israel in its genocidal starvation campaign against the Palestinians. And now it's Iran is on the agenda. And so I think the latest move is basically he accepted this pretext. Just the pretext for Iraq was weapons of mass destruction. The pretext for attacking Iran is the nuclear program, which they already agreed to limit under the Obama administration. Trump comes in, rips up this agreement, and now is on war footing with Iran. The Israelis, who have no restrictions placed on them, attack Iran, which suddenly calls forth a huge counterattack of missiles that they can't stop. Again, exactly the same situation. You make a move, and now because of your blindness, the Jews are blind. The traditional icon of the Jews. They have a synagogue has a blindfold. You're blind to the consequences of your actions. Suddenly, everyone in Tel Aviv is now being subjected to Iranian missiles. So you made it worse again.
Yeah.
You made it worse again. So now Trump comes in, constrained by the Israel lobby, got to do something. So he comes up with a clever idea. Okay. He accepts this pretext of nuclear weapons, a nuclear program, and then decides, well, I'm going to take out the 3 sites, Natanz and Fordorf, and I forget the other one, and sends in bunker buster bombs. Okay, so this is the United States being reckless, attacking another country and supposedly taking out nuclear weapons. Well, first of all, we know that didn't happen because we have evidence. The world is monitoring radiation levels throughout the world. You monitor these, and no radiation came out as a result of these attacks.
Yeah.
If they were really what they were supposed to be, there should have been enormous amounts of toxic radiation coming into the atmosphere. Nothing happened. And so either the weapons weren't there or they weren't successful. I think that what's emerging now is that Trump prearranged this attack with the Iranians, told them it was coming.
Okay.
Told them that basically so he can look like the big tough guy on the world stage, attacking, being decisive when all he really is caving into the Israel lobby. But then again, being clever and doing a little bit of judo here, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then we had once again, as when the death of Soleimani, they had an orchestrated counterattack. So here, evident, sounds pretty clear. He prearranged the counterattack from Iran. They attacked this base in Qatar. The Americans were told long time in advance. They moved people out, put them in bunkers, and the attack, 6 missiles, 3 of them landed, did no real significant damage, and 3 got shot down. That set the stage for Trump's big move now, which is I'm going to walk in, we're going to make peace, we're going to have a ceasefire with Israel. Well, that brings us up to today, and Trump is furious because the Israelis are not going along with the ceasefire. And so now he's annoyed at the Israelis, which is a good sign. But the question is, well, now what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to supply the Israelis with the weapons so that they can defy you to your face, so that Netanyahu can make a fool of you on the world stage? He's furious. He is, because the one thing he believes in is his ego, and Netanyahu told him in no uncertain terms that he's the boss, and Trump better go along with what Netanyahu wants.
Yeah. I thought the other day, I think we're in a unique situation where Trump's ego could actually save the world. Because if Netanyahu just keeps pushing him like this, it could get to the point where he'll turn around and just say, we're out. You're on your own. Do you think
that's the big question? That is the big question. Does Trump have the power to do that? Does he have the power to do that, or is he beholden to the Israel lobby, one way or the other? It seems to me, in this sense, he doesn't seem like Ted Cruz. I don't know whether you saw this interview between Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a total religious fanatic who is basing his foreign policy on a false interpretation of a passage in Genesis. Yeah, and it came out very clearly that he feels that there is no difference between Abraham. It was just read at Mass yesterday. The promise is to Abraham. It's not Israel. It's to Abraham as the father of all nations. He's not even the head. He's not even like Moses, the head of the Jews. Yeah. He's the father of all nations. And what Cruz is saying is, well, that means the state of Israel. Oh, wait a minute. 5,000 years ago, you got this continuity between Abraham and this thug who grew up in Philadelphia by the name of Netanyahu. Yeah. What's the continuity here? Yeah. And it exposed the ridiculous nature of the Schofield Bible and dispensationalism to everyone. And I don't think Trump has a religious bone in his body. As far as I can tell. Yeah. But he does have a sense of his own importance, and maybe that will, as you said, maybe that with his ego will save the free world or save the world from nuclear holocaust.
That's the one thing that I have some faith in, that his ego will pull the nuts out of the fire. They seem to be playing dominoes with dynamite in the Middle East. It's just this ongoing destruction that they just keep going in and messing things up. But do you think there was agreements made, like him getting $20 million from Miriam Adelson? That was
20 million. Forget it. 100 million.
100 million, was it?
5 times as much.
Okay. So do you think there were certain agreements made that this would happen, or do you think that they would go to the war would happen, or do you think that they just thought they could play Trump?
I think that when he took the money, he accepted the America's position as subservient to Israel's. In other words, I don't think there were any details passed when the money, like here on day one, you have to do this, so and so. It's just that you have to support Israel no matter what they do.
Yeah.
I think that's the condition. I think he accepted it, but he can't really go along with it anymore.
Yeah.
You can't. We've reached certain limits. Even the Jews are having second thoughts about supporting a guy who is basically destroying Israel.
Yeah.
Every time Netanyahu acts decisively, or every time the neocons act decisively, they make Israel's existence more precarious than it was before they acted.
Mm-hmm.
They can't understand. They can't seem to understand the consequences of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't. That's why I keep saying that Jews are blind.
Yeah.
That's the traditional Christian understanding of synagogue. They're blind.
Yeah.
The moment of their visitation came and they didn't see it. The moment of their opportunity to live peacefully with their neighbors has come and gone repeatedly, and they simply cannot see it because of their total rebellion against logos, against reason. This is the only characteristic of Jewish identity that has any meaning.
Yeah.
It is the source of Jewish identity. It's rebellion against logos. It began with the rebellion against the logos incarnate, Jesus Christ, when they killed him.
Mm-hmm.
They said his blood be on us and our children. So they ratified this as the main principle of Jewish identity. And they've been revolutionaries ever since, alienating everyone. They are enemies of the entire human race, alien to all, no matter, depending on which translation you want to use, of Paul's claim in 1 Thessalonians 2.
Okay, I was going to ask you, where is that? Because that's not in the KJV, or, I mean, this is in the old. That's been removed. That's one of those things that has been removed from the Bible.
The translation I use repeatedly is the Jerusalem Bible.
Yeah.
And the Jerusalem Bible says the Jews are the people who killed Christ, and they are enemies of the entire human race. Now, the Latin, I think, is adversus omnes, contrary to all men. Sometimes that's translated. That's not a really strong translation. What does that mean, contrary to all men? So it depends on which translation you want to use. But I think that enemies of the entire human race is a striking description of the way things are right now. Right now. Look at the United Nations resolutions for trying to get a ceasefire. And you have the United States and Israel, and then Nauru and Micronesia, and everyone else is against it, is in favor of a ceasefire, and they're thwarting the will of the overwhelming majority of members of the United Nations. Yeah.
There is so much open hatred towards them, and I always just try to gain understanding in these situations. And I wanted to put out there, I put it out there. No one responded. I'm not huge on Twitter, but I just wanted to ask them, do any of you understand where this hatred is coming from? And I get the impression that they really don't, because I kind of feel like the first step towards resolving all this stuff is understanding.
Right.
But I know a lot of Jewish people who are speaking out against Palestine, who are speaking out against this war, about their actions. So I just don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Well, their go-to term, the solution to every problem, is to say anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
and they stay. It's like you've got a really big gun, but you only got one bullet. And the bullet is called anti-Semitism, and they fire that bullet, and they realize it's not killing anybody anymore.
Yeah.
It just you fired this too many times, and now you're repeating yourself, and nobody's taking you seriously. The main cause, if you want to use that term, the main cause of anti-Semitism is Jewish behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no other explanation.
Yeah.
If the Jews were to change their behavior, we would be living in a different world, but they never do that because Jews never do anything wrong. It's always someone else's fault. And this is a kind of neurotic behavior that has become basically taken over the United States government.
Yeah.
That's the problem because of money that the Jews have buying up politicians through IPAC and all the other various organizations they have.
Yeah. There's a guy I came across on YouTube a little while ago. He's Middle Eastern. I'm not sure where he's from exactly, but his name's Sahid something. And he throws out all this kind of demoralizing information about the West. He's very critical of the West. So I listened to him, and I I'm curious about what he has to say, and I think he makes a lot of good points, but he salts a lot of what he's saying with a lot of outright lies. And one of the lies that I found like kind of funny was that he said that Muslims and Jews have never had any problems. Like they're besties. And I said this on Twitter, and a bunch of people came back and they were saying, well, that's, they've been fine until the invention of Zionism. And so I just went through and gave a list of like 4 pages, and there was so much more I could have posted, but all these events where Muslims and Jews have had some serious problems. The thing I found interesting about it was it was never like the Jews did this to the Muslims and therefore the Muslims reacted this way. It was just this constant, we are victims, we are victims. It's just a relentless, as you say, blindness, which is hard to comprehend.
Yes, that's why I wrote the Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, because I think we have to go beyond the categories that the world has provided or the America's Third Republic has provided. And I'm talking specifically about the Holocaust narrative.
Yeah.
The Third Republic began in 1945 with America's victory in World War II. America needed cover for its war crimes, and so it collaborated with the Jews from Hollywood in particular, to create this, what we call the Holocaust narrative. It was a propaganda campaign that got out of control over a period of time. Hollywood was so good at it that they just kept churning out Holocaust movies to the point where it took on a life of its own. It became this kind of Frankenstein monster that could be used to justify anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And that's basically the way the Jews used it, and they overplayed their hand. If at the time of the Biden administration, whenever Biden was administration, he was incompetent, mentally incompetent, but it was run by 457 Jews in the Biden administration. And some of the top Jews were Alejandro Mayorkas and Merrick Garland. Mayorkas was head of the Homeland Security. And so when the senator would call him to task, Senator Hawley, for basically a border that did not exist, Mayorkas would say, I have relatives who died in the Holocaust. And that was the end of it. When Merrick Garland was accused of using the FBI as a way of attacking Catholics, and all these memos about how they're going to subvert traditional Catholicism came out, Merrick Garland said, well, I would never do that because I have relatives who died in the Holocaust. When Anthony Blinken failed once again to broker any type of deal, and he was called onto the carpet by the Senate, he would say, I have relatives who died in the Holocaust. This is what they do. Benjamin Netanyahu had to resurrect the Holocaust to justify the genocide in Gaza. So it's wearing out.
Yeah.
It's wearing out. The more extreme their behavior, the less people are willing to talk about something that happened 80 years ago as a justification. And there's a lot more clarification of what happened then, as opposed to the mythology that was created by Hollywood movies over this period of time.
Yeah.
So I've been saying for some time now that this is all conditioned by time.
Okay.
That we're at the end of the Third Republic.
Okay.
The Third American Republic. Nobody talks this way, but it is obvious. They all last 80 years.
Yeah.
First one was 1781, beginning of the United States Constitution. Lasted until 1861, when the Civil War broke up the country, and concepts like states' rights disappeared.
Okay.
And were replaced by a much stronger central government. 1865 to 1945 was the Second Republic. That ended with World War II. And what I just talked about, the creation of the new myth, the myth of America, which is the Holocaust, let's say from the American perspective, is that we defeated fascism so the Jews wouldn't be murdered in concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
That was enforced by hundreds and hundreds of Hollywood movies. But that's ending now because we're at the end of an 80-year cycle again. And this is the end of the Third Republic. And now Israel, from being a persecuted minority, which is how they portrayed themselves at the end of World War II, are an absolutely ruthless, totalitarian, racist, rogue state that no one can seem to get under control. And so the fundamental issue is, do they have to follow the same rules? Do Jews have to follow the same rules that everyone else has to follow? Or is there some exception here? And if there's some exception, how do you square that with the American democracy, representative government, the Constitution, and all the other rules everyone has to abide by? That's the fundamental crisis facing us right now.
Well, I find it interesting because for a while, let's say the Goyim adopted this way of being, where you could say, well, if you were behaving very badly, you could say, well, I'm black, or I'm gay, or I'm this. Right. And it was this like get out of jail free card. And it even worked in courts of law. It was kind of amazing. And now we're at the end of that. People are done with that. People are tired of it. People are like, no, I don't care anymore. People are finished with it. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. After the end of World War II, the first thing that the elites got involved in was social engineering. Gunnar Myrdal wrote the book, The American Dilemma. He was a Swedish socialist who was brought over here as the front man. He did not write that book. It was written by the intelligence establishment of the United States of America. People like Louis Wirth at the University of Chicago was one of the main authors of that.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
That inaugurated the Civil Rights Movement, which came into being in 1954 when the Supreme Court passed Brown versus School Board, outlawing segregation. Race has always been the counter narrative in America.
Yeah.
The real narrative is religion. America is an Anglo-Protestant country. That's what Samuel Huntington said. That's always been the fundamental East-West, the frontier narrative. It's religion, but the North-South narrative is also the narrative of social engineering. So all of the sources cited in Brown versus School Board were all Jewish. Murray Friedman wrote a book about it, bragging about how this was all based on Jewish science. So the Jews at this point had been working on using blacks as proxy warriors ever since the Harlem Renaissance, ever since the Leo Frank case, ever since the founding of the NAACP. And now they had the force of the government behind them, and they became, what should I say? Jewish proxy warriors.
Yeah.
They had the Jewish dispensation card. They now had the black victim card, which was an imitation of the Jewish victim card. And that ran its course, up till the end of the Third Republic, when Trump gets elected and he suddenly turns on DEI, which was an advanced diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was an advanced stage of basically the civil rights movement and the social engineering that was behind it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. Being on Twitter at the moment it's Lucas Gage's song, Boom Boom Tel Aviv, has 27 million views, probably 28, 29 million views now. He's got distributors from all around the world contacting him. People want it as a ringtone. He's just released it as a ringtone. It's kind of amazing. But I mean, I think there's quite a few of us that saw this coming. I mean, I imagine you saw this coming.
I think it was cathartic after standing by helplessly as the Palestinians were just, bombed into rubble, all those innocent women and children being killed, and no one being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So finally, when the Iranians launched a counterattack into Tel Aviv, everybody was celebrating.
Yeah.
Everybody felt good about that because it was, in some sense, a reminder that there was a moral law, that maybe you were going to be punished for what you did. Maybe what goes around comes around. And I think that's what drove the popularity of the song.
Yeah. Well, we always celebrate when we see a bully get their ass kicked. When you see a bully get their ass handed, like, we just love that. It's a trope at this point. So yeah, it has been quite miraculous. Do you? My friend Sandy sent me this question. I gave my answer, but I'd like to get your answer. Is this war in Iran happening because Iran 3 months ago found the world's biggest supply of antimony and also the lithium they have there? How much do you think that weighs into it?
First of all, lithium has become very important.
Yeah.
And it's a new focus of imperial warfare, in the same way that hydrocarbons were after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm sure it adds to the fact. But I think if Iran goes, that means Israel controls all of the petroleum in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Wow. That's always been the case.
That's
you got
the goal.
Saudis are already on our side. The Israeli side, on the other side of the Gulf, the Saudis don't like the Iranians and vice versa. They don't like each other. And so now you would have total control over the world's greatest source of hydrocarbons. That's always been in the background here.
Yeah.
Lithium may be the new oil.
Yeah.
Because it's needed to make batteries, and batteries are needed for electric cars, for one thing, but for a lot of other stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they are planning on rolling out this future with robots and self-driving cars, I mean, Tesla just brought out their self-driving batteries. But, I mean, my opinion of all this is that everything is economic and ideology is secondary. Ideology kind of is the excuse that they use, but everything is essentially economic first.
I think everything's religious first.
Okay.
But obviously there's an interaction here. To give you one example, the President Vučić of Serbia is now in trouble. Sparked basically the biggest demonstrations in Serbian history, where basically it looks like 50% of the people marched out onto the streets because he's planning to turn Pannonia, the country's biggest agriculture resource, into a lithium mine.
Right.
Rio Tinto wants to buy it up, and it will pollute all of their agriculture, destroy the agricultural production for Serbia for the interest of a few billionaires who are going to pay off Vučić to do their will. So it's not just lithium has become a big issue now.
It is, yeah, it's huge. I saw some of the images from that protest. It was impressive. You rarely see that many people mobilized on a single issue.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of, let's say, 100 million people showing up in Washington.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. It was very impressive. But, so what do you, like, I feel like a lot of this stuff makes me think that this really is a potential World War III, but at the same time, I think that Israel has run out of time. They've done their dash. That they've never lasted more than, 80 years in one place?
Right.
I think
No
their
Jewish
time's
kingdom has lasted more than 80 years.
80 years.
Ehud Barak said that.
So I
Former prime minister.
yeah, I think this could be it, because they want this war. It seems pretty obvious. They want this war.
They do, but they can't. How exactly are you going to proceed? That's the next question. I think that this whole attack on the nuclear facilities was a sham. I think it was prearranged by Trump
Yep.
to give him the ability to declare a ceasefire. If you're serious about that, first of all, I don't think anyone was serious about this nuclear threat. Iran simply was not a nuclear threat.
No.
They do want regime change in Iran. There's no question about that. But you can't create that by aerial bombardment. You have to invade the country. Israel cannot invade that country. They would like the United States to invade that country. The United States cannot invade that country at this point. It is simply not. They are not capable of doing it. So after discussing this with an Iranian friend of mine, he said basically the only option that he can see on the horizon would be a terrorist attack where Israel would drop a nuclear bomb on Tehran. And this would terrorize the entire population in the same way that the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki terrorized the Japanese population into unconditional surrender. Now, the United States did that when it was the only country in the world that had atomic bombs.
Yeah.
And that's not the case now. And Pakistan, which is next on the list, has said that if Israel attacks Iran with an atomic bomb, they will attack Israel with an atomic bomb. So I don't think that's a serious option, which means they don't have any options.
Yeah.
Trump, in a sense, has outflanked the Israelis by doing what they want, by taking their pretext seriously and saying we acted decisively and now it's time to have a ceasefire. And now Israel is plunging more and more into irrationality by violating the ceasefire that is in their interest. So they don't have options. I don't see what, if they have, tell me what they are. Because I don't see them right now. I don't see any other option now. Trump called their bluff.
Yeah.
Trump called their bluff. The whole nuclear thing, it doesn't exist anymore. It never existed as a category of reality to begin with. It doesn't exist at all anymore. What's the option? Okay, you're going to continue to hit Iran with missiles. Well, that means Iran is going to continue to hit Tel Aviv with missiles, and you can't stop them.
Yeah.
How long is that going to go on?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. They, I've wondered as well, like, they're so good at propaganda, and that we all kind of know they've got nuclear weapons, or at least we assume. They've never admitted it. There's a chance they don't even have nuclear weapons in Israel, that they're just simply saying they have and threatening the Samson option. So this veil of secrecy is kind of tripping them up, in a sense, is what I'm getting at. Because I tweeted something, I said, America, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Also America, Israel's our greatest ally. Just the kind of double standard in that, where you're dealing with a country that is potentially holding the world at ransom with the Samson option. Do you ever take that seriously, the Samson option?
Yes. But the question is Israel willing to commit suicide? Well, there is tradition there. Masada was exactly that. Okay. It was the failed uprising against Iran led to Masada, where they all climbed up on top of a big hill and killed themselves. Anthony Blinken talked in glowing terms about visiting Masada and how his stepson, climbed up didn't take the elevator up, climbed up all by himself. This is obviously a big part of the identity of the Israeli as a revolutionary.
Mm.
That they're willing to follow that revolution to its logical conclusion in self-annihilation, rather than to become a human being and start talking and apologizing for what you did and rejoining the human race. So I think it's something that should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
I think it should be clear that we should be taking clear steps to prevent these mad dogs from running out and biting people. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to, I think that what Trump did is a good sign that he understands that you have to rein these people in. But the question is, does he have the power to do that? Does he have the will and the power to do that?
Yeah.
That's the big question.
Well, to quote President Trump, what was it? He said, "We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing." I think that's pretty on point. I don't see them ever doing, as you said, rejoining the human race, coming back around and acting with some humanity. I just don't see it. I don't see it either. I mean, if character is destiny, and the best indication of what you're going to do in the future is what you did in the past. And if that, I mean, repentance is always a possibility if you're a Christian, but they're not Christians. They hate Jesus Christ. They hate the Logos. They think that, when you're in this mode, every step you take is toward your own annihilation. They don't understand that. They don't, it happens. So how much more obvious does it has to be this time around when 1 week missiles are not falling on Tel Aviv, and then a week later missiles are falling on Tel Aviv and destroying buildings and killing people? How much more obvious does it have to be? You took that move, and now it's worse. Yeah. And you have Israeli citizens attacking, at least verbally, attacking IDF soldiers, saying, "Why are you doing this? I don't have a home now because of you and your recklessness." Yeah. There are only brutal answers to the Jewish question. That's the conclusion I've come to.
I believe as a Christian that God's in charge of human history.
I hope so.
Obviously, the biggest question, as soon as you say God is in charge of human history, well, what about evil? What about evil? So then your village atheist comes up and says, well, either God is not all powerful, which means he can't prevent evil, or God is not all good, which means he wills evil. So there goes your God, and so much for that. No, that's stupid. That's village atheist type of shit. The Bible talks about Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers. That was a bad thing. But there was a bigger plan behind this that nobody knew about, which was basically Joseph was going to rise to the head of the granary in Egypt at the very moment that Israel was starving to death. And the brothers have to come to him for grain, and he reveals himself and the plan. It's at the end of Genesis, which I think is a significant point. And he says to them, the evil that you intended to do to me has been turned by God's power into good. And so what the God created human beings with free will. He's not going to violate your free will, but he knows that evil is always a possibility, and he knows that there's always a way to turn evil into good. So you basically, like Trump, I think people mock me for saying this, but I said God spared Donald Trump's life. I think that's obvious. If he had turned his head an inch in the other direction, he would have been dead. Okay? So why did God save his life? Because he wanted him to do some good. What's the main good that he wanted him to do to bring about peace? He's not going to force Donald Trump to do anything. Donald Trump can screw it up. Everyone can screw things up by your own ego, choosing your own ego over the common good. If you'd asked me the day before yesterday, I would say, well, Trump is going to bring about the end of the American empire one way or the other. in a violent conflagration, or basically a modest retrenching of saying, okay, we're going to withdraw from all of those 500 bases throughout the world. We're going to concentrate on the American Republic. We're going to start talking. We're going to blah, blah, blah. Or we're going to press on to nuclear holocaust. So it obviously, there's a good way and a bad way to do this. And that's, God's not going to violate your free will, but God's not going to allow this thing to go on when he doesn't want it to go on any further.
Yeah.
And if looking at human history, it looks as if 80 years is the limit. Certainly the limit of every Jewish kingdom. I think it's the limit of every American republic. It just seems to be empirically an objective segment of time.
Yeah.
Strauss and Howe did a book called Generations, where they say everything is in 80-year cycles, and then they break it down into 4 20-year cycles, which correspond to generations.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept, but I think they overplay their hand and they try to do too much with something that you can't do it with. But I mean, the concept is out there, and I think that if you go back to Vico, he said, well, look, any empire is a human construct, and like all human construct, like human being himself, it rises to maturity and then it dies. And the hopeful thing when you're a Christian is that God can bring good out of that evil. So at the end of the Roman Empire, people like St. Jerome thought it was the end of the world. We can't survive unless Roman law holds these barbarians in check. Well, it didn't work. And all my barbarian German ancestors swept over the Danube and over the Rhine, and they swept the Roman Empire off the face of the earth. And it was like the end of the world, but something better came out. It was called Europe, or the Holy Roman Empire. But even that had its, rose to fame, and then that declined. Yeah. The American Empire is going to be no exception to this. It's way overextended. It's trying to do things that are impossible. And so the question is, are we going to have a violent end, or are we going to have a peaceful transition?
That question has been, I think a lot of people think that the plan is to kind of hand it to a technocracy and hand it off to China or something like that.
Or AI.
Yeah.
AI will solve this problem.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of faith in AI. There's a lot of talk about AI being this kind of demon and there being demonic entities behind it. Do you give any credence to those ideas?
No. AI is a sophisticated form of autofill.
Yeah, that's the impression I've gotten. Yeah.
It's like talking to the average graduate student.
Okay.
In other words, you have the conventional understanding of things here.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll get if you type in a question to AI. In that sense, now I'm talking about sophisticated question. If you ask AI who won the World Series in 1954, you will get a straight answer.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. It's good for that, because we're always, in the middle of writing something, you think, well, what was the date for this? So it's good for that. But when you get beyond that, you're going to get the standard, what should I say, the conventional wisdom, because what else is it going to do? It can't think.
Yeah.
It's based on what has been put into it, and what has been put into it suits the goals of the people who own the internet, who already own the information machine.
Yeah.
So that's all you're going to get back. You're not going to get anything other than that.
Yeah. It's interesting how much AI has been failing, but it will get better. But they're talking about it feeding back into itself when it starts to train itself. But also, some friends shared with me an article that said how people who use AI, when they take them off the AI and get them to write something, their ability to write has dropped significantly compared to people who have never used AI. So it kind of it dumbs us down at the same time if we rely on it too much.
Well, I think it's destroyed the essay question.
Yeah,
At
right.
the university.
Okay.
I don't think anybody. The only way you can do an essay question, which I think was the most significant form of test, as opposed to multiple choice or any of those things. The only way you can do that now is to hand out pencils and a blue book and stand over these people and watch them write it. You can't say, go home and write an essay about the causes of the French Revolution. ChatGPT will write the damn essay for them.
Yeah.
You've destroyed the university in some sense.
Yeah.
You've destroyed the university because no student will ever do any work. He will not think on his own. That's the problem. That's the university's problem. And the university created its own problems long time ago. And so it's just they're going to have to solve it or they will not solve it.
Yeah.
In which case, no one will go there.
Okay. Do you think the fourth American empire will be essentially idiocracy?
First of all, it's the fourth American Republic.
Sorry.
Which will be the end of the American empire.
Okay.
And to say idiocracy, you mean run by idiots?
I mean like the film Idiocracy.
I haven't seen the film,
oh,
so
okay.
explain it to me.
It's just a guy gets frozen. He's in the army. He gets frozen and then woken up like 100 years later, and everyone is so dumbed down. It's just a ridiculous kind of parody of pretty much modern life and where it's going, and even the doctors all rely on computers and they really don't do anything themselves, and it's just that kind of thing where people are just fat, lazy, and stupid. And
you have a fundamental conflict in like the United States of America between skills, proficiency, the ability to think through problems, solve problems, which is in sense one good thing that you're trying to promote. But the other side is you're trying to promote social control. Because you don't trust people. The oligarchs do not trust people to do what they want them to do. So you have to have a maximal emphasis on social control, which will then destroy your ability to be a competent worker. So which is it going to be? Are you going to tweak this? We went through this with drugs. It's in Brave New World. Huxley was way ahead of his time in thinking this thing through. And so you have what you want is a docile robot who will show up and pull the lever on the assembly line. So this Huxley was really impressed with Henry Ford. He's all throughout the Brave New World. Fordism is like the wave of the future.
Okay.
That's a contradiction. Do you want a productive workforce because labor is the source of all value? Let's focus it on Michigan. The state of Michigan was the powerhouse. Detroit is the powerhouse of the automobile industry. It was the automobile industry turned into war footing that basically won World War II with mass-produced crappy weapons like the Sherman tank. What do you want to do with that? Is it not necessary anymore? Are we going to outsource it to China? A crucial fact is that the state of Michigan legalized marijuana. Now, this is right out of Huxley's book. Huxley referred to something as soma.
Soma, yeah.
You know, we have a drug that's going to make everyone docile and happy. You will be docile and happy. Will you be a good worker? One of the characteristics of good workers is being able to learn from your experience and develop, make sure that you do it better the next time around. Is marijuana going to help you to do that? Is marijuana? Henry Ford, for example, was faced with this issue with the workers, and he brought in Muslims because they don't drink,
right?
As opposed to the Irish. And Dearborn is basically the Muslims who were brought in to work for Ford. Ford's headquarters are in Dearborn.
Okay.
Bring in the Muslims. They don't show up hungover on Monday morning and so on and so forth. Okay. The question is, are they as productive as workers from elsewhere? Well, now we're talking about generations since the 1920s. Okay. But we're faced with the same thing with India, for example. When my son was working at the Ford plant, they had a plant in Chennai in India. And do they have the same experience as people in America in terms of work? No, they don't.
Doubt it.
They have a completely different attitude toward work. You can go to India and you can see it. There are women who are basically walking around with bowls of dirt on their head because they're cheap labor.
Yeah.
Do you want cheap labor? Okay, you will pay a price for cheap labor in terms of productivity. And but they don't understand these so-called geniuses who think that labor can be replaced by computers.
Yeah.
Is the problem is that labor wages, low wages over the long haul lead to higher production costs. No one understands that. Heinrich Pesch understood that, and he could talk about that. So you want cheap labor, you're going to end up with higher production costs, and you're going to end up with a crappy product. You're going to end up with women carrying bowls of dirt on their head, filling up holes without even. I was amazed to see this in India. You're not even talking about the wheelbarrow. That wheelbarrow is not high tech. Why didn't they use a wheelbarrow? Honey, go home. You have a beautiful head that should be put to better use than carrying dirt around on it. But that's what you're dealing with. Okay, you're going to outsource everything to India? Well, what type of productivity are you going to get as a result of people who are used to putting dirt on their heads and walking around with bowls of? I'm not trying to denigrate Indians. That's kind of in the fashion right now. I'm just saying that it is a fundamental fact of labor. Understanding labor is that they just when you put a premium on cheap labor, you're going to get low productivity. That's simple.
Yeah.
These are choices we have to make. And so why did you legalize dope in Michigan? I know why. I wrote an article about it. You can go to Culture Wars and read that article and find out why I spoke to the guy who was responsible for it. Okay? It's not going to help. Dope is not going to help us all. Dope is a kind of sign that we are ruled by oligarchs who just want to keep people docile, and we're going to outsource everything to China, and you're just going to be poor and smoking dope, and that's the future of this country.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was getting at with everything being economic. There's they're not legalizing weed because they've just kind of come around on it and they started smoking weed and they went, hey, this is all right. There's a reason behind all this. It's the same reason there's so many jobs that are like so many government jobs, which are essentially, they're not even really a job. People turn up and they write a few emails and they make TikTok videos. It's to give these people something to do, and it's not really necessary, but it's pushing it towards further state control. That's just how I see things. That's how I see it all going.
Yeah. The fundamental fact at the beginning of the Fourth Republic. How are we going to deal with this? The basic fact, the fundamental conflict we're facing now is the Jewish question. We don't have representative government anymore. We have IPAC paying for the entire buying the entire Congress, forcing us into wars that will not benefit us and won't benefit Israel either. How do we take our country back when every time you bring up this issue, someone calls you an anti-Semite and you're banned from some platform or other?
Yeah.
How are we going to deal with this issue? How are we going to deal with the mess that's in the Middle East right now if no one is allowed to criticize Israel and no one is allowed to vote in Congress for American interest as opposed to Israelis' interest? How are we going to solve this problem?
There needs to be a radical solution. Someone needs to step in, and it just needs to, the control needs to be relinquished.
Right.
And taken back by America. Thomas Massey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Thomas Massey is a very important figure because he shows that one person can resist this enormous pressure
Stand up to
and
them.
can represent the American people. If one person can do it, then two people can do it, and so on. There's no reason why this can't happen other than this ferocious attack on anyone who disagrees with total Jewish hegemony over our culture. And I'm talking about Donald Trump now. Donald Trump has joined in on the attack on Thomas Massey. How is that America first? How is not that Trump acting like a lackey for IPAC?
Yeah. Oh, look, I get the feeling that there are some people out there in the next generation. I think things will shift over the next 10 to 20 years. There will be a rising up. And
I think you're right. I think it is generational. I think that the younger generation has basically not accepted the narrative, the Holocaust narrative, Jewish hegemony. There are a group of people now who feel if you're not addressing the Jewish question, you shouldn't be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the casualties of this was Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson had a big following among young people, telling them to clean up their room. And then suddenly he gets hired by the Daily Wire, which is a Jewish operation. And then he announces to Benjamin Netanyahu to give him hell, in other words, to engage in the genocide in Gaza. He lost his audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Certainly he lost his Muslim audience.
Yeah.
And now he's in a position where you can't carry those obsolete categories into the future.
Yeah.
So, okay, you made a lot of money, but nobody's listening to you anymore.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any credibility because you sold out. You chose money over the truth.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've been going for an hour, so I'll just ask you one more question and then we'll wrap up. I just want to know, are you hopeful about the future?
Of course I am. I told you God's in charge of human history. I believe that. But you have to have the right categories to understand how this is happening. How God will allow the Israelis to destroy their own country because, he gave you free will. So that's what I'm saying. The signs are there. You can see them if you have the right categories. And I think that's what we're passing into as we enter the Fourth Republic. There's going to be a new era where the old categories they're not going to hold, they have no hold over our minds anymore. We need new people, a new generation to come up with the solutions that these people can't solve. That's why I'm hopeful.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So conversely, if you do not believe in a God that is in control of human history, then you have no reason for hope. Our hope is in the Lord, who made heaven and earth.
I keep kind of trying to get across to people that regardless of all the stories you may have heard, in my life and in my life experience, the church for me has been nothing but a sanctuary. It has been a place where I've been safe. At one point in my life, it was the one place where I was safe. So my lived experience gives me a lot of faith in...
Mine too. Mine too. I wouldn't be here talking to you now if I didn't have this Catholic identity that simply on a natural level protects me.
Yeah.
And I'm even talking about a supernatural level where God has your best interest in mind, but you have to follow his plan because he'll let you destroy yourself because, he believes in free will. But there is a plan, and it will protect us all if we follow it.
Amen. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us once again. This is not the last time we speak, and we will do this again, I hope. And
thank you.
God bless you, and let's charge into the future and make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Again, but I know what'll make you feel